So we managed to get on before 6:30 today, which is still late according to my calendar, but it's earlier than we have been for a while. Today's going to be a chill day, I think. We've got certain things we got to do, though, such as finding a markdown editor. Yeah, okay. I'm looking for a live editor that is it called a live editor? What's the word here? It's like a live renderer almost. That I will use for title/notes on my Twitch stream. So it's really the live editing that I care about. So this person really enjoys Typora, and then this thing says Obsidian is almost a Typora killer because of the Obsidian live preview. So that's really what's important. It's the preview that we really care about here. There's pricing involved? It's free forever to run locally, however, for hosted services. Okay. What is Typora? Is it because if it's costly then? All right, the main challenge with showing a text editor on stream is syntax clutter, right? You need a hybrid or live preview editor that hides the markdown syntax instantly as you type, creating a clean, readable display for your viewers, right? The cleanest visuals, Typora, a pure distraction-free window that looks like a finished document, not a code editor. What you see is what you get. When you type title, it instantly snaps into a large header and hides the hashtags. It has no permanent sidebars or ugly toolbar icons. Costs $15 per lifetime. That's easy, though. Excellent stream tip. You can enable focus mode, fades out non-active lines to guide your viewer's eyes exactly where you are typing. Non-active lines. Focus mode. Okay, the FOSS I forget what FOSS means. Mark text. All right, let's just start looking at these. Okay, and then the power user choice. If you want deep customization and already manage other notes, why? Since that mode acts like Typora, live preview mode acts like Typora, because it uses. So we have to really see Typora in action here. And then we have to see, so this is literally, okay, this is probably perfect. This is all we need. Yeah. Okay. Easy. And then we've got everything that we could ever want to put on screen. Really easy. Okay, Obsidian. This is more, I think, of like you need a repository of notes, and this is your live preview. So I think what we're looking for is Typora. So download. Let's get this download going. Oh, what's the purchase? What's the download? Do we get to do anything with the download until we purchase? Yes. 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 And sure. Okay. We are installing. Now, how does this work? Purchase. Ooh. Nice. Hell yeah. Okay. Maybe I should do that on the side. Yo! What's good, Darmanam? We are figuring it. Oh, wait. This. I don't understand. Am I allowed to use this for free? What is good? Chilling, working on music. Nice. Hell yeah. It's a good weekend activity. Good Sunday morning jam. Am I able to use this or what? Next. Oh, it's forcing me to activate. Okay. But we could start a trial. Okay, this is great. So what we want to do is, yes sir, Sunday Jam, hell yeah. Gotta be on that music grind. That is, of course, in a healthy way. All grinds on this channel are healthy grinds. We want window capture. Window capture. We want to create a new capture. This is going to be our notes. Typora notes. Yes. Typora. Capture method automatic, sure. Oh, window match priority. Match title, otherwise find window of same type. It's got to be, I don't know what the difference between type and executable is, but capture audio, no. Force SDR, I don't know what that means. Okay, so then what we want to do is we want to take this, we want to do that Alt drop down. Yep, beautiful. And then we want to get this smaller. Or how do we want to do this? Do we want it to be just more... Oh, I can change it. That's perfect. So now we can be more clear. We need a view. We need to change the zoom in here. Control Shift equals. Control Shift equals. Okay. Oh, because it's a plus. I see. So then we could always do something like this is... Why are we jumping up and down? Whoa, what was that all about? This. One word. Word count. This. Unregistered. What's going on here? Oh, this is, yeah, okay. I know. View, can we get rid of this bottom bar? Show status bar? Yes. One word. Spell check. Source code. Oh, that's cool. Sidebar. We want to get rid of this. Yeah, because ideally we literally just have like a... this is rough. I don't know what's going on with this. Topic of the day. Mental health. But I don't know if this is great. We're not able to make this any smaller. Oh, we kind of can. Oh, right, I can't move this around. That doesn't work. This is going to have to be somewhere like... Where would this need to be? Up top? So we need another way of doing this. Could we just make this larger? No. Ooh. That's still way too small. So it is a heading one. Can we get it to be a title? How do you do titles? Oh, okay. So that's what's... I did backspace, which is... It got rid of the heading. I guess there is only one. Increase heading. Okay, so control equals... There's probably no heading above heading 1. Okay, table, quote, format. There's no size adjustment except for... Well, we could always just crop it. So we could always just say that we're going to zoom out here to like there. We could always do a topic of the day. And then that's so far out though. This is rough. Okay. Did you watch David Bentley Hart on Alex? I did not. I was so impressed. I bought his book, not gonna lie. Wow. David Bentley Hart. And this was this video on Logos. Oh, nice. We live in God. Hey. I'm guessing it was this one. There we go. Nice. So eloquent. He speaks like someone's thesis, like scholarly. Hell yeah. I'm sure he's not dropping hell yeahs here and there. What is the way to do this? How do we go? How do we do this? It's not ideal. Can I make it so that it doesn't wrap? Format wrap, view wrap. Focus mode has been turned on. You can turn it. Okay. I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's pretty obscure. It's a good size. We could always change this too. We could always make it larger. And but we can't really just do. All right, we want to get rid of focus mode. Yeah, we can't have it be a separate line, unfortunately. So it's tricky. We'll have to feel it out, but I could always just, whoops, I could always keep it. Oh no, it's right. Typora notes needs to be on top, so I guess I put this all the way on the bottom, or at least below the display capture. Nope, that didn't work. Oh, if I go down, this still needs to show. So force SDR. We've been able to do this with our with Notepad before. Like in theory. Oh, now we've lost it. We've lost the plot entirely. Okay. Huh. Typora was missing, and then okay. So can we get the same executable maybe? Like, where does this go? It's not there. It's not. What is happening here? That's Twitch. I'm gonna have to Gemini this one. How can I have a window capture on OBS stay showing even when the window is minimized? If it's possible. I could have sworn that we used to do that with the notepad, but I could be wrong. If I do always on top and then, no, that doesn't work. Short answer is you cannot capture a window that is technically minimized. All right, so then I have to put it elsewhere and then I just have to close it out. I see. And I have to, oh no. There we go. Well, it's not the best, but I think it'll have to do. All right, we can do that. We can get this going. I forget why we brought this up yesterday, but we can try to watch it. We can see what's going on here.
What has experience taught you? The answer is likely to be a lot. We're all learning from experience all the time. And because this process is automatic and personal, we hold the knowledge earned this way in extremely high regard. We even seek it out in others, hiring employees based on their experience, reading books to learn from people's triumphs and disasters, soliciting advice from those more experienced than ourselves. Because lessons learned firsthand have immense and obvious value to us. Julius Caesar summed it up over 2,000 years ago. Experience is the teacher of all things. But hold on a second, all things? What about those times when experience didn't seem to help much at all? Nobel Prize-winning economists failing to anticipate financial crashes, renowned political pundits making hopelessly
All right, what's going on here?
consequences. This is a kind learning environment. The feedback you're getting is abundant, immediate, and accurate, making it easy to learn useful lessons.
All right, we gotta just summary this up. There's so much fluff going on here that we're getting almost no substance. They argue that while experience is a powerful teacher, it can sometimes lead to incorrect conclusions due to the nature of learning environments. Correct. That's cool. Kind learning environments. These provide abundant, immediate, and accurate feedback, making it easy to learn useful lessons. Right, but this also includes LLMs saying really nice things to you so that you believe what it says. And if it's wrong, then that's not great. Wicked learning environments. These environments offer incomplete, delayed, or unreliable feedback, making it much harder to learn effectively. The video illustrates this with a scenario of trying to ride a bike blindfolded with delayed brakes. The core problem arises when people mistake wicked learning environments for kind ones. This leads to drawing inaccurate conclusions based on incomplete information, as demonstrated by an investment example where perceived causes of success or failure are misleading. To avoid this trap, they suggest asking two crucial questions about available information. What is missing and what is irrelevant? The video concludes by emphasizing that in our complex world, it's vital to assume situations are more complicated than they appear. Absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be tricky to like know what the right environment is, right? It's kind of nice to say that there's kind environments and wicked environments, but it gets a lot, obviously, more gray in between. So yeah, we need other heuristics than just those concepts. Okay. I think we got to start right here. We gotta get back to our roots. Watch the little gact. Just the best vibes. So the video I do want to watch is Dr. K's The State of Mental Illness in 2025. Now this is a really long video, so perhaps we do the summary and then jump to parts that sound good, but I did want to write down notes while we did that. And then also some updates. I actually started spending some time editing. I edited this video, and then I edited a couple shorts. We got two. Actually, they're not shorts. They're other videos. I guess I could make shorts from those videos, but we'll see. The workflow might be streams to videos, and then those videos to shorts. Like I could literally take the same video that I end up rendering, and then cut it in such a way and include the subtitles, and then make a short out of that, like maybe on an important piece, something I don't know, say. Yo, nice. That's just great. That's just wonderful. Okay, let's get a sense of what happens here, because I think I saw this and then I did the summary and I saw that there was a lot of great stuff here. So discusses the state of mental illness in 2025, focusing on ADHD and why individuals with the condition struggle with motivation even when they have ample time and no distractions. Dr. K, a psychiatrist, explains that this difficulty stems from the brain's wiring and development, where reliance on deadlines and emotional urgency for action strengthens those neural pathways, right? And then we have key takeaways. So I don't know, what happens in that first 20 minutes? Oh, and this summary doesn't even go past that first hour, so I'm not sure what's going on with that either. Okay, so we don't actually start for a while.
A 30-day, like, when I work with my patients, we do two things. One of the things that we do is psychotherapy. We also do psychopharmacology. But then a big part of what I do when I work with people with ADHD is we try to understand our brain and our mind in a certain way where you can, like, basically adapt to having some kind of ADHD style deficit and succeeding in life. So this is where I think this is...
Why are the subtitles like that?
It's important because nowadays everyone feels like they have ADHD. I don't know that everyone has ADHD, but I do think we are starting to see some of the symptoms of that ADHD induces in people without ADHD because of the influence of technology on our mind. So we're all becoming a little bit more ADHD. And one of the things that I try to do is, the way that I kind of understand it is, if you've got an ADHD brain and you live in a neurotypical world, sometimes that doesn't line up. And so what we try to do in this 30 Days to Thrive with ADHD is basically like come up with an adapter, right? So how can you... The default solutions that people will give you that are neurotypical may not work for you. So are there other things that you can do? Once you understand your brain, can you sort of figure out a way to adapt to...
Nice thoughts, Dr. K. Too bad thoughts don't exist. True.
The world that we live in. And that's where, you know, I think it's so interesting, because when I work with people like streamers, like, these are people who very, very, very high prevalence of ADHD in the streamer population. And there are certain things about the way that our brain works that could even be advantageous. Some people really don't like that kind of idea. I think it's, like, fair enough to think about ADHD as a disorder. Some people sort of think about it as a difference, right? So it's not neurotypical, but it's like neuroatypical. And they don't really adopt the pathology model. I think both are pretty fair. I've worked with some people who just have really, really crippling disorders. And then some people who really think about themselves and conceptualize themselves as, I'm just different. Let me figure out how to play the game in a different way. So y'all should check that out if you want.
One thing that we might want to consider is, if, like, Dr. K says a lot of stuff on this channel. And if we were to just try to watch a bunch of videos and brute force organize it ourselves, that might take a long time. I wonder if it would actually be more efficient to just literally check out the coaching. And then, oh no, this is actual coaching. Never mind. What's the thing that he's got that you could pay for? This guy? Mental health resources? Yeah, like, we could perhaps use this type of thing and leverage this to organize the topics for ourselves. Granted, obviously I have to put this into, you know, part 2 of this document. Yo, Onion Hello, what's good? What do we have here? Oh my. Okay, we have to save this as a special occasion. I think. We've got another Gact video as well, by the way. But yeah, it might be just beneficial to figure out how they organize these topics.
It was actually a lot of fun to make. So yeah. Now, let's actually. So I guess we can get started. Second. Not be a problem with source of stress, right? So if we think about ADHD, there's a really good chance that there is stuff that you need to do, and you actually have a lot of time to do it. So this should not be a source of stress, right? So if we think about, generally speaking, why are things stressful? They're stressful because there's too much to do and too little time to do it in. But if you're someone who has ADHD, this is a really, really, really common problem where like you'll have a lot of time to do something, but you can't bring yourself to do it. And people will even say like, you know, there's people will kind of relate to it like this, like having zero drive is actually the worst feeling in the world. I've had days where I had all the free time, no distractions and such, but there's no drive and it absolutely sucked. And when people talk about this, they'll say, okay, this is an executive function deficit. When I say people, I mean myself included, right? We'll say this is an executive function deficit. And then if we say, okay, it's an executive function deficit, you should go see a therapist, you should get executive function training, I think that's great. That's a great idea, right? So we offer a lot of these different tools like Dr. K's Guide to ADHD where we sort of work with all that stuff. But what I want to do today is I want to show y'all fundamentally why this happens, okay? So why is it that if you have a lot of time and you have something that you want to do and you have ADHD that it feels impossible to do? So in order to understand this, we have to understand a little bit about neuroscience and a little bit about development. So
Okay, so I'm wondering if this is so part 2. I just have this category of cognitive function where I was thinking that we would put things such as I mean, we could put obviously things that improve cognitive function in general, and then we could also talk about specific issues with cognitive functionality, such as or cognitive functioning, such as strategies for productivity or like how to get out of procrastination, stuff like that, improving sleep, all that stuff. That might need to come like last, I feel like. Like I almost feel like emotional behavior, emotion regulation, then automatic behaviors, then our personal contexts, and then cognitive function. Something like that. Maybe. We'll see. Autism plus ADHD, Einstein or basement gamer, you pick. Wow. I'm guessing that there's different symptoms when you look into it, but yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it yet.
ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. I think this is something that we do not appreciate enough.
So is this all?
It is not a static.
I guess that this video is probably about ADHD mainly, so I don't know if this is going to be super helpful, but we could try to see what's going on.
It is about the way that your brain develops over time. And the big problem is not just that there's some genetic deficits or whatever. The way that our brain chooses to spend its skill points when it levels up creates this situation. And once you understand how you've leveled up your brain, you can actually respec the brain. And this problem, I know it sounds crazy, will go away. Not 100% of the time. I would say that for 40% of my patients with ADHD, this problem gets 80% better once we understand this aspect of it and we start to retrain the brain. So let's understand how it works. So here's little old me. And I have tasks to do. And I have difficulty focusing, so I don't do them. Okay? Then what ends up happening is I have one of two things happens. Emotions, usually negative emotions, or, so this is going to be things like last-minute panic, or even positive emotions, like curiosity. And if I get curious about thing number 2, then I'm going to do it. If I have last-minute panic about thing number 1, then I'm going to do it. Or I'll have deadlines. So I have numbers 3 and 4, and once the deadline kicks in, I will do them. Does that make sense? So I've got homework I have to do at the end of the week. I won't really bother with it. I'm going to just wait, and then I'm going to do it. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that every time you do this, you are actually changing the wiring in your brain. I know it sounds crazy, okay? But here's what happens. So here's the part of our brain that governs action. And the part of our brain that governs action, let's kind of say it's a frontal lobe. right? That's sort of the frontal lobe or the anterior cingulate cortex is like the part of our brain that integrates a lot of different information. So we have parts of our brain like the nucleus accumbens, which give us dopamine. So the nucleus accumbens goes over to the frontal lobes and says, hey, we really want this. This is really exciting. Give me some dopamine, brah. And then we also have our limbic system, which gives us emotions. And the emotions go to our frontal lobes, and they say, hey, bro, we're feeling this emotion, therefore we should act in this way, right? So a good example of this is, I want to play video games instead of doing my homework. And then the limbic system says, but if we don't do our homework now, we're going to have panic. So we're panicking over here, okay? And then we want games over here. And then these two things go into the frontal lobe, and then they fight. They duke it out. And then one ends up winning. So the video games win and win and win and win and win until the panic rises, until we overcome our desire to play video games, and now it's outweighed by the panic. And this is also where deadlines come in. So what happens is there's this part of our brain that is like, okay, when do we need to do this? Okay, it needs to be done.
Trading card game: autism versus physics. Autism. How do they differ? Physics. I feel like I haven't like been around a lot of mathematicians or physicists or people that are like really interested in that stuff, other than, you know, just in general or generally interested.
On Friday, so we don't need, it's only Monday today, we don't need to do it today. Now here's the big problem. When we look at the way that our brain works, our emotions come from here.
The card came out to say,
and basically, what does executive function deficit mean? So if we look at deadline, pleasure, and emotion. Every time we do something, we strengthen the connections in our brain. So every time that I let a deadline dictate my actions, what happens is the size of the connection between the deadline circuit and the action circuit in my brain actually increase. So now the influence of deadlines on my ability to act has increased. Every time I let last minute panic induce my action. If I do not act until last minute panic, what does my brain learn? My brain learns, oh, okay, so like we are now becoming a panic dependent brain. Now it requires panic. Every time we play video games, we strengthen the connection, right? This is how addiction forms. We strengthen the connection. So now these pipelines, the ability to influence the brain by emotion and deadline, is actually increased. And if we look at things like doing things ahead of time, knocking things out, getting stuff off of your plate, all of these like other non-demanding sort of like healthy way of doing things, all of those connections, oh, we could do it today. No, we're going to do it tomorrow. This actually shrinks the connection in our brain. So this is doing things ahead of time. Right? And there's a really like interesting example of this. Have you all ever wondered why you have like 40, 50, 60-year-old people who throw like temper tantrums like they're kids? Like, it's kind of weird, right? You'd expect these people to grow up and stop behaving like children. The reason they never stop behaving like children is because these pathways have been so boosted because they've been behaving in this temper tantrum kind of way for like years and years and years and years and years. Now these pathways are very strong. We are actually training ourselves. Every time we do this, every time we have a pile of stuff to do, and we rely on these things to get them done, we strengthen those pathways in the brain, and then we weaken other pathways in the brain. This is also important to understand. Whatever pathways your brain does not use, it actually weakens. This is why we do things like forget languages or lose skills, because if we get rusty, our brain is like...
The one thing that Dr. K is not explaining that I think is necessary, like logically, is like, how do we know that these are mutually exclusive in the sense that building one of these would diminish the other? Like I think we know that, but he needs to explain that type of dynamic so that people can be convinced of it. Is that true? The strengthening one weakens the other, etc., or vice versa? I think so.
Like, we don't need this anymore. Let's decrease it. So what I see in my patient...
In many parts of the brain, that's the way it works. Just given, I forget the concept, but in many parts of the brain, strengthening certain connections like involves inhibiting the connections around it. But yeah, I would have to see that. Okay, people who usually have temper tantrums do so because their brains are used to it. Yeah, I think that's it. Like, this is why it's really important when you're a kid that your parents discipline you during that stage. Like, there's a usual stage in child development where you naturally just do a temper tantrum, and that's fine. That's like a, you know, imagine that's a canvas for like learning or for conditioning in some sense. Like, this is the time where the parent needs to condition this out of the kid by not rewarding it. But if a parent rewards it, then yeah, that's why. So if adults are having temper tantrums, it's because it's been rewarded in the past.
Patients is that they've gone through life relying on these things at a very early age, right? Because neurotypical people will say, oh, you got to do this, you got to do this. They don't sit kids down and teach them how to do things ahead of time. They don't strengthen those pathways. And then what do you end up with? You end up with this, right? You end up with this, where you got to do something, and you literally, you can't do it. It's like you're sitting there, you know you need to do it. You know it needs to be done. And you literally, like, there's this voice in your head that is saying, oh my God, we need to do it, we need to do it, we need to do it. I don't want a last minute panic. I don't like last minute panic. Panic doesn't feel good. I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. And we cannot control ourselves. And that's because the part of our brain that wants to do it ahead of time, the influence it has on action is so small, whereas these influences, because of our neuronal wiring, are huge. And so what people will do is they'll say things like this. They'll say, oh my God, this is coming from someone with...
So what do we do with them? I don't know. I mean, ideally you start disciplining it even when they're an adult. But, you know, it might just be a bummer if it's not possible to do that. You know, they just kind of, you know, there are people that are unsocialized in many different ways that we just, you know, that's really it. I don't know if you've seen The Sopranos, but I think that's an excellent view of how unchanging people can be over time. It's just, you know, there's some things that are just so deeply ingrained in a person that you know, I've watched The Sopranos fully. Nice. One of the best shows. It's like, yeah, it's, like some things just don't change. And a lot of times it's belief systems. Like you can talk someone, you know, obviously this is something that shows up in like political discussions where like you can show someone the reasons why something is the way it is or something could be wrong or whatnot. But like, because they're just totally in that other space, like they're so ingrained in it, even just seeing that doesn't actually like change the deeply wired in reality that they experience on an everyday basis. So
ADHD, at a certain point, you got to accept responsibility for your life. Don't rely on fleeting bouts of motivation. Make it a habit to be productive. Now, this is true, and it's a problem. It is a habit that has created this situation. Y'all get that? This is a habit. What is a habit? Let's understand this.
Right. That's the kind of the idea of this automatic behaviors. We want to talk about it as habits almost. In part one, we talk about how the thoughts we have we can think of as habits of thought. You know, when you see that this is a pen, it's because you have a habit of interpreting something that looks like this as a pen, in some sense. You know, it's because you built those connections, and it would take a lot for you to not think that that's a pen, right? You could get I think you could get deconditioned, perhaps. It would require, you know, incredibly salient experiences, like perhaps you get immersed in a different language, and then soon you see it as a whatever the word is in that thing. But you know, also if you enter a culture where anything that looks like this is actually a bomb, you know, then that might shock you out of thinking it's just a pen the way that you normally think it is.
Is this. Once a certain neuronal connection becomes really, really, really strong, that becomes...
Okay, so we could skip ahead past these things that we know. The brain strengthens connections every time an action is dictated by a deadline or strong emotion. This creates powerful automatic habits of procrastination and panic-driven behavior. To unmake these habits, Dr. K suggests acting without emotional or deadline pressure. How far away is this? 1 minute?
Is start acting when we don't feel like it.
Acting when we don't feel like it. Start with small, unimportant tasks that have no deadline and aren't emotionally charged. For example, cleaning up a small item. So this is going to be a huge type of pattern in the document for all these topics. You know, when there's something that's really difficult that would require a ton of willpower to do, then that's literally not feasible in this moment. But what can you do such that this is more feasible in, you know, next week? And the idea would be to make small incremental changes that are easy, that lead you, that compound and lead you to the thing that actually would be hard in the moment. But you change your own brain such that that thing is not hard anymore, or that, you know, you have a lot more motivation to do it. That's the whole point of. So we talk about the practical levers here. We talk about the biological conditions of motivation and energy. We're trying to change our brain over time such that what our brain gives us in the moment is actually energy and motivation. So this is like a strategic way of going about this. This strengthens the do things ahead of time connection. All right, avoiding action during phantom panic. What's going on here?
The other thing that we need to do is not act. So when you feel really emotional, when you feel like there's a huge deadline, don't do anything. Now, if I say that, so y'all understand? So now there's signals coming into my brain. Oh my God, we got to do it, we got to do it, we got to do it. If you act in that state, you are going to reinforce that part of your brain.
When the habitual drives are telling you to act in. So is this in the case of a deadline? Like, is he saying miss the deadline?
You're going to reinforce that circuit. You're going to reinforce that connection. Now you will say, but Dr. K, are you telling me I should ignore my deadlines? Oh my God, you're telling me if I have a paper due, I shouldn't do it? No, that's not what I'm saying. Technically, that's what I said, but hear me out. Listen. If you have a deadline for work or school or whatever, you have a doctor's appointment, you should show up, by all means. And if you need to use last-minute panic or whatever to get there, that's fine. But here's what I mean. Just hear me out, okay?
All right.
If you've got ADHD, and even if you don't have ADHD, there is like a really high chance, like 90% chance, that there are times where you feel panicked when you don't need to be panicked. There are deadlines that you are going to feel that are not real deadlines. This is like, oh my God, I have to do this right this second. If I don't do this right this second, everything is going to fall apart. No, I need to like get this birthday present like right now, because if I don't get it right now, then it's going to get sold out, and then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. We induce this panic. Once these deadline and emotional circuits, this is the crazy thing. The deadline and the emotional circuit are not necessarily tied to reality. Right? Once we feel the panic, the feeling of the panic creates the idea of a deadline. Does that make sense? Phantom panic. Beautiful. This is what I'm talking about, right? So don't shirk your responsibilities, but really, you will notice, and this is what we do in therapy. It's like, okay, you're panicking about this thing needs to get done. Let's stop for a second and think through it. Let's talk through it. Let's really understand what is the big deal. There are these phantom panic scenarios. When you are phantom panicking, do your best not to give into it. Now, if I say don't give into it, that doesn't really work. So this is why I'm explaining it in this way. When you feel phantom panic, the mechanism that allows you to activate your frontal lobes, because in this moment, we need our frontal lobes to be active and restrain that panic. That is exactly part of the executive dysfunction that we see in ADHD. How do we activate the frontal lobe? We activate the frontal lobe by going meta, by rising above it and saying, oh, if I'm just stuck in the phantom panic, if I'm inside the phantom panic scenario, I'm lost. So what we need to do is step outside of it. The question is how? How do we activate the frontal lobe? The way we activate the frontal lobe is by saying, oh, this is an opportunity for me to overcome phantom panic. This is an opportunity for me to level up my brain in some way. Now the scope of the problem changes. It's not about this panicking scenario. It's about, okay, like we're doing this run for this boss, we're doing this run to level up to prepare us for a raid boss later on. Does that kind of make sense? Do y'all understand? Because this is what's hard. We don't know how to turn on our frontal lobes. But literally, if you look at someone who's in a panic attack, who is stuck in their emotions, we need to have them step outside of it. So there's certain cognitive techniques that you can use. Okay, hold on a second. Is this phantom panic? Even if you ask yourself the question, is this phantom panic? And even if you lose to the phantom panic down the road, that's actually totally fine. Because which part of your brain reflects upon the phantom panic? That is your frontal lobes.
So this is like also, I believe, how meditation works. Like you're not accomplishing everything in one day, in one practice, but by utilizing and deploying your attention in very specific ways that are, executive, and asking the right questions of like, what was, you know, what does that thought mean? Or we talked about that. What was that one? This just sounds like Asperger's. That one meditation where you just keep asking, like, is this real? What was the one? Did we talk about that on the show, or was that something I saw? It was a oh, I forget. It was the New York Times guy had someone on that was talking about that type of meditation technique. I think it was on the stream. But yeah, you're leveraging your executive network in such a way that affects the trajectory of your brain development, so that in the future you're able to handle a situation such as, you know, crazy default mode network yelling a bunch of different things at you.
So even asking the question, am I phantom panicking right now? That question in and of itself, right? So if you guys have been in therapy, you'll sort of know this. Asking that question is like half the battle. And that's because that question, if you ask that question comes from the frontal lobe. Now you're activating your frontal lobe. You're weakening the connection between action and emotion. You're strengthening the connection between your anterior cingulate cortex, your ability to reflect on your thought process, and your actions.
So that's the third thing here, right? It's reflecting on what you are doing. Are doing is a huge deal. In other words, leveraging your executive network.
So this is a problem of...
Okay, conditioning versus burnout differentiates between conditioning, which feels bad in the short term but leads to long-term improvement, and burnout, which depletes you further. Applying these techniques might feel difficult initially, but it's a process of conditioning the brain for long-term better health, right? Absolutely. Treating panic attacks, okay, outlines twofold pharmacology and skills training. We could talk about that in emotion regulation. Treating panic attacks.
Okay, how do you handle panic attacks? So the management of panic attacks is a very clinical thing, right? So as a psychiatrist, the way that I treat panic attacks is like 2 or 3-fold. The first thing that really does help a lot is pharmacology. So you can do something like high dose, not high dose, but usually you require higher doses of SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, some SNRIs, things like that will help with panic attacks. And this is important to understand. So a lot of people will say, Dr. K, if you start me on a medicine, isn't that just like kicking the can down the road? How is that actually helping? It just makes it go away artificially. This is what's important to understand. The treatment of panic attacks has a few different steps. The first step to consider is pharmacology. Second step is skills training. Okay? So actually, let's draw this out. How treat panic attack. We're going to do this one. SNRI, anxiety return, attacks. The first skill that we want to train is breaking vicious mental cycles. To snap out of it. So here's what happens in a panic attack. I have a thought. Oh my God. That is a terrible... And once I have a thought, it activates my sympathetic nervous system. Cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline. Okay? Now here's the big problem. So thought travels to I have a series of cell clusters along my spine called the sympathetic chain ganglia. So they go all along the spine. My thoughts connect to nerves. Nerves travel down my sympathetic chain ganglia, activate my sympathetic chain ganglia. My heart rate increases, my blood pressure increases. The sympathetic chain ganglia go to these little areas right above my kidneys called my adrenal cortices, where they secrete cortisol and all this kind of stuff. Here's the big problem. All of these are hormones. And hormones are chemical messengers that don't act locally. They travel through the bloodstream, and they activate every part of our body, including our brain. And adrenaline does something really scary in the brain. It makes possibilities feel real. It makes potential dangers feel like real dangers. So it also increases the speed of our thoughts. It increases the activation of our emotional centers. So
obviously the thing he said where it makes fake dangers feel like real dangers is true, but I don't know if you can say more broadly that it makes all possibilities feel more real. The question is, what would real mean there? But I don't know enough about this to really push back on that. But that seems a little sus to me. because we could talk about possibilities, obviously, in a much broader discussion.
This increases the number of thoughts we have. The more thoughts we have, the more it activates our chain ganglia. The more thoughts we have, more chain ganglia activation. There we have a panic attack. So how do we break this cycle? We break it in the thinking, and we break it in the physiology. So if we activate the parasympathetic nervous system through something like a meditation technique, right, where y'all will see this kind of thing, like, you know, that people used to do in movies, where they're breathing into a paper bag. Why are they breathing into a paper bag? Really fascinating. So when your sympathetic nervous system is activated, your respiratory rate increases. I start to hyperventilate. When I hyperventilate, two things happen. My O2 increases, but this is more important. My CO2 decreases. This happens way more than O2 increasing. Our O2, really, ventilation is more about blowing off CO2. So now my CO2 level is really, really, really low. This can make me feel lightheaded. So when I breathe into a paper bag, I start breathing less oxygen and more CO2. The concentration of air inside the bag is CO2, 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 and then just one O2. The more I breathe into it, y'all get that? It's just like I'm exhaling CO2, I'm inhaling O2. Now, this is the really cool thing. As the O2 concentration in the bag decreases, as this goes down, I require deeper breaths. Now I need to breathe more deeply. I don't want to just breathe at the surface. I don't want to just let this stuff come in and out. What I need to do is take a deep breath. I need to inhale everything in the bag to get this O2 that's at the bottom. Does that kind of make sense? Because if I breathe in and out, right, that's going to be right at the surface. At the top of the paper bag is where it's going to be full of CO2. So I need to breathe deeply.
This is pretty
Once
sweet.
I breathe deeply, my respiratory rate is now going down. If my respiratory rate goes down, my thinking goes down. The speed of your mind is related to the length of your exhalation. This is what we learned in meditation. Length of exhalation is very, very, very important. Slow exhalation will slow down your mind.
Okay,
So,
I got to figure this. What was this on? Oh, this was the OBS. Oh, okay, I need to figure this out. First of all, I do want to just look this up again. Controlling breath to expand vital life force, promoting. Okay, nice. All right. Can you help me better understand the connection between breath and the sympathetic nervous system? I understand that an inhale affects, or I've heard, I should say, I've heard that an inhale affects the sympathetic, and the exhale affects the para, such that the physiological sigh is really helpful for calming down. Doing the 7-8-4 is helpful for falling asleep. And what are the actual effects? And is it only important that the exhale is longer than the inhale? Or is there something intrinsically calming about slow breaths, even if the inhale, exhale are equally long? Yeah, I'm trying to just get the, the below the layer understanding here. Okay, classic Buddhism disagrees, I think. There is some line in the Vimuttimagga that if the breath is controlled, the mind will not settle. Wow. And of course, Buddha excludes breath control from Anapanasati. I think it works, of course, but the point is only to a point. Mental things need to happen, and then breath control becomes distracting. Right? Breath is another one that Beth says follows course to subtle, as in breath becomes breath subtle and shallow. Right. Yeah. I mean, for the lay person who's not obviously meditating and has like a practice, I imagine that this is fine. And also, there's an underlying thing at play, right? Like even though there's techniques that tell you should follow these types of breathing techniques, I'm trying to understand like how it actually works and why it works this way when we're breathing at all times. So that's kind of the thing I'm looking for here. The connection you're asking about is respiratory sinus arrhythmia. It is a well-documented physiological phenomenon where your heart rate fluctuates in sync with your breathing. Here is a breakdown of the mechanism, the actual effects of the techniques you mentioned, and the distinction between slow breathing and exhale-biased breathing. The mechanism: why inhale equals sympathetic, exhale equals parasympathetic. The link between breath and the autonomic nervous system is mechanical before it is neural. It is primarily driven by pressure changes in your chest. Okay. When you inhale, your diaphragm moves down, expanding the chest cavity. This decreases intrathoracic pressure. This drop in pressure draws more blood into the heart. The heart slightly expands to accommodate the volume. Sensors detect this blood flow change and signal the brain to withdraw the vagal brake, parasympathetic tone. Without the brake, the heart rate increases. This is a mild sympathetic activation. Okay, so we've got some sort of brain interaction here. Via the vagus nerve. Without the brake, the heart rate increases. Okay, the exhale, the brake. When you exhale, the diaphragm moves up, compressing the chest cavity. This increases intrathoracic pressure. This pressure slows the blood flow into the heart. The baroreceptors fire again, signaling the brain to reapply the vagal brake, stimulate the vagus nerve. The heart rate slows down. This is parasympathetic activation. You are essentially oscillating between mild stress, inhale, and mild relaxation with every breath. Okay. That's the understanding I had. We got to get into the specifics. I think it's the difference between a physical and mental practice, although not fully separable, of which both are aware. Practitioners of both. Nice. Yeah, I imagine it's nice to practice broadly just to get a sense of the field and have a intuitive sense for yourself. The actual effects of specific techniques. You mentioned the physiological sigh and 4-7-8 breathing. While both use the RSA mechanism, they have distinct physiological targets. All right, the physiological sigh, cyclic sighing. Double inhale and then long exhale. So like, I think he does like a yeah, so like a I don't know, Huberman does it better. The double inhale is not just about oxygen, it's about mechanics. The second, right. That's what I'm assuming. I'm assuming that this isn't necessarily just about oxygen. It's leveraging the stuff that we just talked about. Actually, you know what? I did not know about the heart thing. I knew about the this. I didn't know about the heart stuff. So that was good to know that there's that type of reaction. Okay, actually, regarding the mechanics of the breath, is cortisol released every time we breathe in? We inhale? Due to inhibiting the parasympathetic nervous system. I do some ujjayi with yoga and occasionally, so yeah, Ujjayi is, I think, what I did during yoga as well, and that's kind of how I breathe almost all the time now when I'm not yapping. Though I guess I don't go as crazy on making it loud. Like in yoga, I think you're kind of supposed to breathe as loud as you possibly can, almost with Ujjayi, or I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but occasionally Nadi Sodhana to start meditation. Like if the yoga pose is easy, I just add Ujjayi. All right. Are the actual effects of the double inhale is not just about, it's about mechanics. The second sharp inhale forces the collapsed air sac in your lungs to pop open. This increases the surface area of your lungs. When you follow this with a long exhale, you can offload a significantly higher volume of carbon dioxide than normal. Why it calms you. CO2 tolerance and anxiety are linked. Rapid dumping of CO2 via the long exhale combined with the mechanical reset of the alveoli signals an immediate reduction in physiological arousal. Recent studies suggest this is more effective for acute mood improvement than box breathing. For the physiological sigh, I'm guessing that this shouldn't be used for a panic attack, given the concerns that hyperventilating might lead to a significant reduction in CO2, leading to the to techniques such as breathing in a paper bag, as Dr. K just pointed out. So I'm trying to connect those two things because we have two contradictory things right now. We've got the physiological sigh is helpful because it gets rid of this dopamine, not dopamine, CO2. And then we've got, obviously, in the panic attack, when you're hyperventilating, you need the CO2. So this is, unless that's not what Dr. K was actually saying. Okay, what Dr. K was actually saying might not have been that you're losing CO2, so you want to get more. It was literally, here's a mechanism that forces you to just breathe more slowly. Or is this used only to make someone breathe more slowly? Okay, that could be it. That could be why. If I teach breath... Yo, Energy Dompter. If I teach breath meditation, I normally get them started with Nadi Shodhana, and then getting to joy with the breath is much easier. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't know the different ones, but could always check. Purifies energy channels by alternating breaths between the left and right nostrils. Ah. I don't know if I have enough control to do that yet. I would have to probably... Yeah, I would probably have to... I would have to like actually practice that to be able to gain that control. Can you ask ChatGPT the prompt I asked yesterday real quick? Very easy. Okay, nice. I'm not allowed to like touch anything. Oh, you can use your fingers. Oh, I see. Energy Dompter, I don't know if it's gonna be quick, right? Isn't it like aren't I putting in like a whole entire paper into that prompt? Also, you know, we can't just stop what we're doing, you know, on a whim. That wouldn't be fair to like imagine if more people were watching. Like these questions have to be less about you know, placating you in some sense. Like this needs to be something that is helpful for everyone involved, such as you know, fun videos like this that we're gonna get to in a second. All right, recent studies suggest this was okay. 4-7-8 breathing. Inhale 4 seconds, hold 7 seconds, exhale 8 seconds. This relies heavily on the ratio. By exhaling for twice as long as your inhale, you are mathematically forcing your heart to spend twice as much time in the deceleration phase. Right. This acts as a manual override to slow your heart rate and sedate the system. Okay. What really matters? You asked if the exhale must be longer if slowness itself is enough. The answer is that they achieve different goals. So acute sedation, calming down right now, ratio matters. If you're in a state of high arousal, the exhale to inhale ratio is critical. You need to bias the system toward the parasympathetic side to counteract the sympathetic surge. To fall asleep or stop a panic attack, make the exhale longer. But goal B is autonomic balance and efficiency, baseline health. Slowness matters. If you are strictly trying to improve heart rate variability or regulate your nervous system over the long term, slowness is the primary factor. Breathing at a rate of roughly 6 breaths per minute, often done as 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, synchronizes your heart rate, respiration, and blood pressure rhythms. Even with equal ratios, slow breathing is intrinsically calming because it maximizes the efficiency of gas exchange and baroreflex sensitivity. Okay, that makes sense. We're getting everything in sync. That's going to lead to calmness over time. It puts the system in a state of coherence rather than sedation. All right, so we can ask these two questions. All right, we've got ChatGPT in the chat. I understand, but you said we could yesterday. Just this one time, pretty please. I do have to point out that you ask just this one time very often, so I need to hold you to that. You know, do you understand the power of one time? Like, are you forgiving or foregoing all future times? If we run out of time for chakra week, I won't be able to handle it. Oh, we could do a chakra week. Is that something that we need to include in March? Remember, I need help with the curriculum, the March curriculum. Granted, I think I said that we want to add some bits of emotion regulation in March. I mean, one, that's a similar topic, but two, I think we just still need to do it. I've seen the neuroscience takes we've been listening to play out in real time. Uh-oh. Which takes? Dr. K has something interesting to say about it. Nice. Personally believe in them. Yeah, I would be down to go into that just to check it out. See what's useful. All right, this is a great pushback on the mechanics here, spotting a very common contradiction in how breathing advice is usually dispensed versus the actual gas exchange physics. Here's a breakdown of why the inhale doesn't spike cortisol and why the physiological sigh resolves rather than worsens panic. All right, does inhalation release cortisol? No, there is a major timing mismatch between breathing and cortisol. The inhale, when you inhale, the vagal brake is withdrawn. This is an electrical neural event involving the SA node of the heart. It happens in milliseconds. But cortisol, hormonal slow. Cortisol is the end product of the HPA axis, the hypothalamus to pituitary to the adrenal. This is a hormonal cascade. Once triggered, it takes minutes for cortisol levels to rise in the bloodstream. You generally do not release cortisol breath by breath. The stress of an inhale is a momentary withdrawal of relaxation, not a deployment of stress hormones. If you inhaled and held your breath for 2 minutes until you turn blue, that stress would eventually trigger the HPA axis. But normal rhythmic inhalation does not. Okay. The physiological sigh versus panic attacks. Your logic here is scientifically sound. Panic attacks often involve hyperventilation, rapid breathing, which dumps too much H2O, CO2. I can't see CO2 and say it. I have to say something else. The physiological sigh also dumps CO2. Therefore, shouldn't a sigh make it worse? The answer lies in air hunger versus gas exchange. Why panic breathing starts. The trigger. Panic breathing, hyperventilation, is often driven by a false alarm of suffocation. Stress causes you to breathe shallowly. Shallow breathing causes the air sacs in the lungs to deflate and stick together. Your brain detects that lung volume is decreasing and oxygen exchange is becoming inefficient. Okay, so you do want to get that surface area via the physiological sigh, but at the downside of getting that extra CO2 when you don't need it. We are suffocating. Breathe more. You breathe faster and harder. Because you are panicked, you take shallow, fast breaths. This doesn't pop the alveoli open. It just dumps CO2 rapidly, causing dizziness and tingling, which makes you panic more. Why does the sigh break the loop? The physiological sigh is distinct from hyperventilation because of the double inhale. One normal inhale is often not enough to pop open the collapsed, sticky alveoli. The second sharp inhale increases the pressure just enough to force them open. Once those air sacs pop open, the suffocation alarm in the brain is silenced. The sensation of hunger vanishes. Because you no longer feel like you're suffocating, you stop the frantic, rapid breathing. You can then perform the long exhale to reset your CO2 tolerance. Awesome. Okay, a note on the paper bag. You're correct. The paper bag was used to force rebreathing of CO2 to reverse respiratory alkalosis. Current consensus. Most medical professions no longer recommend the paper bag for panic attacks. It is difficult to distinguish a panic attack from a heart attack or asthma attack in the moment. If the person is suffering from asthma or a cardiac event, restricting oxygen with a paper bag can be fatal. The modern advice is coached slow breathing or cup hands breathing, which offers mild CO2 reuptake without the hypoxia risk of the bag. Okay, I wonder if you knew someone was prone to panic attacks and they're like healthy and in their 20s, I'm guessing you could probably still feel fine about, and you know that they don't have asthma, then I'm guessing you could still feel fine about the paper bag. But okay. Energy doctor, we could get to it now. Poor impulse control, cognitive dysfunction, cognitive bias. Oh, I see. The stream is a portal to like 2040. Hell yeah, a book showed up in my dream. Does that mean I have to read it? Which book? In the Buddha's Words, an anthology of discourses from the Pali Canon by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Some dude was studying it. I can't remember more. Does Lord Buddha strike people like Zeus? Like, are there stories? I mean, I would say perhaps don't force yourself to read it in its entirety, but maybe that's a sign that says that something deep down in your psyche is telling you that perhaps it's worth checking out. But obviously, like if you check it out and you find that it probably won't help you out or you don't enjoy it, then I wouldn't say like that you should just force yourself to read it all the way through. Okay. Gemini. That I still have this here, right? Do we still have our selection? Yes. Tibetan Buddhism, the Buddha reveals extra teachings to forest yogis. I guess the Buddha is just chill. I mean, I think that's kind of apt, right? Isn't that what people would say? Based on the text provided, the paper constructs a metaphysical argument that attempts to solve the problem of time flux by linking it to self-referential logical paradoxes. The core of the argument is that while mathematics and physics describes a static universe, logic generates the movement of time, specifically the instability of paradoxes. Oh. So when we talk about logic, once again, we have to be clear with what we're talking about. Logic in this sense cannot be our experience of thinking logically. It can't even be our our experience of noticing a pattern that is logical, like whether someone says something logical or you think that something is just logical in its structure. Like that can't be what this is talking about. I'm guessing, if anything, that this is the logic here is like an interpretation of something that we're seeing in relation to this paradoxes. The premise: math and physics cannot explain flow. The author argues that standard mathematics and physics describe time as static. Past, present, future exist simultaneously. Yep. Blah, 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 blah. So we did point out that this wasn't actually this. I don't know. It was. Did we say that this one was substantiated, or like this one was, the leading theory? I think maybe we saw that relativity and quantum mechanics, once you get past the collapses, do follow this. Physics can describe the measure of time, but it cannot explain the passage of time. Oh man. So this is the error here. We've gotten to the consciousness. This is problematic, you know. I mean, I would say at this point, perhaps you could pre-vet these things, given that I say the same thing over and over again. To connect a topic at the level of physics with something like consciousness is not appropriate. Like we cannot make any assertion about the universe and the physics of the universe given our experience of time as we believe we experience it. And we're going to get into it. If we start making if we start leveraging ontological axioms, then we have gone off course, and now we're going to just be dealing with a semantic puzzle. Consider the statement: this true is false. The statement is false. If it is true, then it must be false. If it is false, then it must be true. Okay, cool. The oscillation. The paper argues that this is not just a dead-end contradiction, but a dynamic process. The mind flips back and forth between true and false infinitely. The author compares this logical okay, so yeah, it is doing that. It's saying that the axiom is that time is not static in consciousness, but it is static in the universe, and then it creates that paradox. So already we've got flag in the play, and then we've got some sort of weird semantic thing where we're taking a contingent experienced concept. I mean, actually, both of these concepts are obviously contingent, but we're taking intuition and we're connecting it with our conceptual understanding of physics, and that we cannot do. Our intuitions about consciousness do not deserve to be ontological axioms here. Consciousness triggers. Okay, we got to get out of here. I'm sorry. We got to run. We got to run away, and we can't look back. All right. Intuition can lead to insight. Intuition's great. I'm not saying that we shouldn't use intuition for we should use intuition a ton. In part 1 of the document, we say exactly that. Intuition is really great. It's leveraging a ton of things, right? It's leveraging, first of all, the human mind. Like intuition you could think of intuition as an adaptation of evolution. Like it's there to help us out, right? It's going to feed us a signal, like it's like our conscience. It's going to feed us a signal that helps us out. And then also, we can trust in our own understanding that actually affects that signal. Like we can trust in the fact that we've learned a bunch from culture and whatnot. Like we know things, right? So integrating. We could use the rich insights from wisdom traditions, and this is just insight in general, right? Do I say that more clearly later on here? When we deliberately reflect, we make our own implicit conceptual understanding empirically available to us. This act of self-observation allows us to clarify our beliefs and values, to question their origins, and to consciously determine if they are truly justified. By interpreting the learning, and okay, so this is really just this is focusing on that, but yeah, perhaps if I were to change this, I would make it more clear that like intuition in general is something that like it's almost like integrating intuition and the domains of wisdom, obviously, but we could just replace everything I say with intuition here. Yeah, where do we have this? I feel like we have something else that talks about this. I just don't know where it would be. It's got to be here, though. Yeah. Yeah, I think I would change that maybe. We could make that better. We could certainly do that. All right. A lot of Einstein talk today. Hell yeah. Personally, I find the argument compelling to me because it makes sense to me that since logical paradoxes exist, the flow of time explains how to resolve these logical So what I'm arguing is that there's no paradox there. Like it wouldn't make sense to call it a paradox. It wouldn't make sense to connect those two. I don't know what the word would be here. Those two observations in the same conceptual playing field in some sense. Like it's not. These are not in the same context. Our experience of time does not deserve to be in the same conversation as physics, unless we're literally talking about how physics affects our experience of time, which you would do through neuroscience, biology, etc. So yeah, I would say because the axioms don't hold up, that we don't have a paradox. So yeah, like if we did have a paradox, then maybe the argument's compelling, but we don't have a paradox. It wouldn't make sense for us to do that. The flow of time explains how to resolve these logical because the logical thoughts change from moment to moment. All right, what paradox exists? So the paradox that exists is the fact that time feels as though it's happening in a direction and it's not static, but our physics implies that time is static. So that would be the paradox. That's the connection we're not allowed to make. We're not allowed to say that those are like in the same field. All right, I thought the stream paused there for a minute in flow state. I was so still. It's because I was you didn't notice, but I was exhaling so much more than I was inhaling. Maybe paradoxes exist, but I would suspect they are word games. Right, yeah, that's it. Paradoxes are literally just it's almost a consequence. It's like a normative consequence of our understanding of truth, and So paradoxes only exist in our understanding, like in our conceptual understanding. Like it wouldn't make sense to say that a paradox exists in the physical world at all, unless we're trying to describe something that we're seeing, right? But it's for our own understanding that we're using paradox as a means to communicate that. Like once again, there's no like there's no in the physical. If we're talking about the physical world, absent of any thoughts, right? Absent of consciousness, there's no like patterns. Patterns is a quality of perception. There's no abstractions there, right? It's just there. Everything's just kind of there. As far as we that's the idea here of time being static. It's just there, you know. There's no like there's no sequencing. There's no patterns of this is in, you know. No relationships, no paradoxes. Insane truth nuke. How is this statement is false, not a paradox? Right. That once again, like that's a paradox within our normative understanding of what it means to like what a statement being false means for us. Right. This is something that we've learned culturally as to how we use these words, what we mean by things are true. You know, we create these systems that are very very practical, very helpful. Such as, you know, 1 equals true, 0 equals false, and then we could have arithmetic with logic. We could have logic gates and stuff like that. But then obviously we have a lot of thoughts that the truth of certain statements are much more ambiguous. So, you know, the question is there any truth there? And a lot of people do think that there's just true things in the world. That's what I've been trying to assault this entire time, push back on, I should say. So yeah, within our understanding of what it would mean for a statement to be false, then yeah, this statement is a paradox in the way that we understand what paradoxes are. But it wouldn't make sense to say that like an atom is a paradox, or that, you know, matter is paradoxical, unless we're referring to just how we understand it. All right. To me, these are just concepts that connect to nothing. Right. I mean, yeah, it might connect to something, right? It might be useful. There are certainly logic games where you might, you know, in the game Blueprints that I just played, there was this game where there were 3 boxes, and one of the boxes has gems in it. And the only rules that you know is that at least one box has a true statement and at least one box is a false statement. So you might end up seeing a box that says this statement is false, and you wouldn't know. I guess you could say it's neither. So you would know that the other 2 boxes, one has true, one is false, because you know that one isn't either false or true. So that's like that's an example. So yeah, it connect. You know, that's a concept that does connect the things in our minds. Obviously, like even the phrase "this statement is false" obviously connects to our concept of what it means to be false, and you know, we can imagine that it connects to all these things, right? That's the whole exercise that we do in part 1 of the document, where we're just conceptualizing what these connections could be. It's not like there's actually connections in the brain that are like, this concept goes to this concept. I mean, we can try to make sense of it like that, but that's not how the brain works. All right, paradoxes are another linguistic convention, a little game. You are 100 meters away from a wall. You walk 50 meters and half the rest. You walk 25 meters and half the rest. You walk 12.5 meters and half the rest. You can do this for eternity, so motion doesn't exist. Right, we did talk about that once on this channel. So motion doesn't exist. Yeah, that's the crazy. I mean, you could do that thing for eternity, right? But the getting to the motion doesn't exist is insane. So are you claiming that logical paradoxes can exist? However, so once again, I'm not interested in do these things exist in like some absolute sense. So every time you ask that, I'm gonna flag you on that. obviously, like we both understand what a paradox is, pragmatically similar enough that we could talk about paradoxes. So in that sense, we can say they exist, just like we could say that pens exist and the sun exists and love exists, even though what the hell is that in the physical world, right? Like, obviously there's a context in which we could say that these things exist, but we're not at the bottom level. We're not interested in making claims about the ontology of the universe and what exists in an absolute sense. However, that can't be logically used to make a statement about time. You could try to describe time using the concept of paradoxes as we understand it, but we wouldn't want to do that with an axiom about consciousness. That's the real point here. It's that our intuitions about consciousness do not deserve to be in the same conversation as physics, and vice versa, unless we're trying to figure out how physics affects our conscious experience of something, or of time. That's the main point. If I were to, that's the most succinct I could say that. One day, a student of Zeno's who learned this. By the way, I should make it clear, Energy Dompter, that this was not quick. Just pointing out that. And that, that's partly me. I tend to just start yapping about this stuff. But all right, one day, a student of Zeno's who learned this paradox visited Diogenes. Final answer, Diogenes. He said, "Diogenes, I have proven that motion does not exist," to which Diogenes said, "Wait here," and simply walked away. Yep, I remember you mentioned that in the past, and I appreciated it then, and I appreciate it now. Everything that can be said about this statement is false, has already been said. I mean, I would say at a most philosophical level that wouldn't be true, because we could say more things, just as I could keep finding new things about this pen. If I keep looking at it, I can probably keep coming up with ways. It's not even probably, our brain is changing over time, so we can keep thinking about and talking about statements, but in a colloquial sense, yes, probably. Diogenes. Oh my gosh, I was so wrong. I was wrong on every single part there. Actually, it was just two. Diogenes. Did I say that first? I believe I understand where you're coming from. However, I believe your intransigent skepticism. Intransigent. Unwilling or refusing to change one's views or to agree about something. Yeah, it's just I guess you could say it's intransigent. The question is whether it's stubborn, right? And I would argue that we spent now a year and a half really diving into the topic of consciousness and how that relates to our thoughts. And so that's why I would say that it's perhaps not stubborn. But at that same note, I did kind of come in with that pre-bias. So I don't know. I think that one, I'm a little less open about that one just magically changing, because it's really a fundamental idea that once again, it's the only idea, it's the only way of thinking about consciousness and words and stuff like this in such a way that I'm allowed to, given what I know about the brain. Like in part one, we're talking about all these things that we know about the brain, such as how learning works, how that implies that our understanding changes constantly, that our experience changes constantly. The topic that we learned recently about degeneracy shows that different brain connections activating can create a similar type of experience. And the question is that experience exactly the same, or does it just feel similar? And that we get into all these different discussions that show how dynamic our understanding is and our experiences. And so, yeah, we can't just take like a, I mean, I'm skipping a bunch of steps, but we can't take an intuition that's contingent on our culture, and I mean, I guess I could just say that, and use it as an axiom for a, you know, that type of physical framing. You know, that's the real concern when we start insinuating things about the physical world from our conscious intuitions. Like, the best we can do is the stuff that we talked about with mindfulness. Like, like a mindfulness practice can make you actually notice bottom-up signals more clearly, in a sense, right? That was kind of that discussion we had. And in that sense, you're learning something about the physical world, some physical process that's happening in a much clearer way. And granted, yeah, no, that's actually the best we could do. But no, yeah, and then also obviously we can observe like empirical patterns in the world, and we could do all these other things that are empirical. So I don't know. I've created a maze for myself now. Diogenes. Diogenes. The O is an accent. Diogenes. Oh my gosh, that's what it was. Yep. Diogenes. So it's like die and then like AH. Diogenes. That makes so much more sense. That makes it so much easier. Perceptual clarity, often talked about as something that increases. Shinzen Young puts it as a part of triad core skills that get developed. Nice. Yeah, I think that I do want to try. I do want to try at, you know what, one day this week, I do want to try at assaulting the conclusions. Oh, I don't know what this was going to mean. Frontline. Let's just change this. Mental health. Mental health. All right, I want to try and push back on some of the conclusions of predictive processing, right? Like, I want to actually try to really challenge this, because the question is, given what we know about predictive processing, which does seem to be front lines of neuroscience, like, how much should that dictate how we talk about the brain, right? Like, so I've been making a stink about the fact that even when you do build that mindfulness practice, there's still some predictive aspect of the things that you believe that you are seeing more clearly. So you are actually seeing, you're being able to notice empirical, physical signals, bottom-up signals, more clearly. Like, you're able to notice them more clearly, right? So you could say that. That said, your interpretation of what is going on is still through a lens of predictive processing, even if it's not something having to do with the DMN, right? That's what we not decided, but that's what we read. It's that there's still prediction happening even without the DMN. So when we talk about predictive processing, we're not just talking about our brain predicting like linguistic categories of what's going on. It's not just about possibilities in that sense. It's actually a much more deep description or interpretation of how processing happens, even in subcortical areas and even in a neuron itself. But how much does that force us to change the way we talk about the brain from simply, like the embodied cognition people have a huge beef with this idea that when we like see an object, that we're actually seeing the object. Like, because so many parts of our body and brain are actually acting while this is going on in such a way that we're really starting with our prediction, and then we're kind of, it's like the prediction's the starting point, and then bottom up signals are affecting the movement of that prediction. So imagine like you have a you know, prediction's just here, and it's pushing it around in many ways. Imagine that's like a multi-dimensional movement. So in that sense, we need to be careful about when we like say that we're seeing the object. But how far do we actually have to go there, right? How far? Like, certainly after a second, this object has affected my predictive model so much so that we could say that I'm looking at the object, right? Like, how do we make sense of this? Like, really, I'm trying to figure out how ought we be able to talk about this to both capture the predictive element here that does have priority, and then also the fact that the bottom-up signals significantly affect those models and our conscious experience. Okay, so we have to do pushing I'm just going to say pushing predictive processing. I don't know what that means. All right. Oh, concentration, equanimity, perceptual clarity. Okay. So yeah, so in order to notice these signals, you kind of need concentration and perceptual clarity, right? And equanimity, that's more, if I recall, that's more just like almost a, yeah, it's almost like a, not a well-being thing, but it's more of a, I mean, I guess you could say you need equanimity too in that process, because you need to reduce noise in order to see, to notice signal. So, okay, remembered what they were. Nice. Somewhat interchangeable with mindfulness. Okay. Very cool. And I apologize if I've been seemingly worked up the past couple of days. I'm not actually like upset in any way. I'm kind of getting into it, you know. I'm enjoying the challenges here. All right. That would be crazy though if I continue this mindfulness practice and like the outcome was that I actually got more like amped up as opposed to more calm generally. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens. Maybe being calm is a defense mechanism that I just need to calm myself out of. All right, so I think we will just continue this tomorrow, and we gotta watch this wonderful video that Onion Helmet has blessed us with. I don't even know what's about to happen here. I don't know what the topic is. Yo. Is that sped up at all? No? Where would this be? Can I just like put this into Gemini and see what it says? Identifying the rascal. What? Oh, so they don't know what it is, right? Is that what this is? They're trying to identify the rascal? Oh, it's a weebo. Or is that what he's saying? Is an weebo like a bird? Oh, yeah. Should we just have funny birds as like the mascot of this channel? It's just any bird that's got a funny shtick. Birds doing funny things. That's the game plan here. As equanimity is basically supreme mindfulness. I see. / perfected. Depends on your technique. Which one do you want? You can get either. Okay. Mahasi speaks about meditators becoming very energized. Again. Oh, man. Is this Maya Higa?
Giggles.
It is. Okay. Oh my gosh, 41 million views? That's incredible.
What do you call a cantaloupe underwater? A watermelon.
That's pretty good. All right. Where's the rascal? Need to identify that. We got penguins, kiwis, weebos. Okay, we got another Gact video because 2 had come out since we last watched it. So we could say this is a good intermission here. Actually, we're at a minute or at an hour 40. So we gotta find out the names of these. Then the other video I have up is this was new, I think, and one day ago. I was really impressed by Unsolicited Advice when he talked about some topic. I forget what it was. And I invited onto the channel to talk about the biggest unanswered questions in philosophy, as well as what he has changed his mind on the past decade on YouTube. Oh no. So we got to give this review. Hopefully this isn't. I'm not trying to just be like indulgent here and point out like, hey, like we've got the answers, but I'm curious what he's going to be saying. How do you get in the head of a philosopher? Oh, it's called a willow ptarmigan.
The better part of compassion.
Yo, nice. I just had a Sam Harris video up. We gotta watch this actually at some point. I'm gonna keep this up. And okay, we can. All right, a willow ptarmigan. Very cool. Alaska, the state bird of Alaska. Nice. Jump scare. Yep. Sam can jump scare me anytime he wants. The birds are really cool. I agree. Some birds are not cool though, I'll say that. Some birds are just there to piss you off. Take that back. I'm trying to think of like when geese start attacking people, or maybe it's swans start attacking people. I don't know. I saw a seagull waiting on one of those restaurant street barriers behind a man eating. Oh, true. Seagulls, they're kind of just out to take. But, all these birds, I'm sure we could find them doing something funny, and then we're back. We're way back. All right. Did I want to do this? What's going on here? I think I did want to start this, or I could just do ask summarize, and then we could start going where we want to go. But this is a 2-hour video. Is it going to get all that? No. This summary tool really just doesn't go that far. So, all right. What have you changed your mind on? Okay, we could just watch it all. I mean, not right now, but...
Stack, the Unsolicited Advice Reading Group is currently reading Kierkegaard's The Present Age. If you'd like to join us, the link is in the description. Right, Alex O'Connor, welcome to Solicited Advice, the show that you named.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, like, I said to some people, you know, Joe's starting a podcast, you know what it should be called, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, maybe... And I'm like, no, like, just think about it for like 2 seconds. What should he call his podcast? And it just jumps out at you, you know, it writes itself.
It does make sense, you know, it's because this time people have asked someone to be here, which is in contrast to my sort of ejaculations out into the void. But
nice.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I can't imagine people must be dying to see us together because it so rarely happens that we get on camera together. You have been very generous coming on my show a number of times, and people are always very excited about it. So it's nice to do.
And please don't stereotype all birds the same. True. Kierkegaard, my king. Might have to join. Oh, join the reading group. Yeah, go for it. Let us know how it is.
Do things the other way around.
Oh, that's very kind. It's always good fun. And, you know, without further ado, I mean, the first question is quite relevant. We've known one another for a couple of years now, and you've been doing philosophy YouTube in some capacity for like around 10 years now. Is that right? Must be coming up to 10 years.
I feel like it was
that, yeah.
longer.
Yeah, which is mental. In that time, how many of your viewpoints have changed? Because, of course, initially when you started, you were known as a sort of new atheist or new atheist adjacent figure, and that's clearly shifted over time. But I'm just interested to see what other positions have changed in the intervening 10 years. I mean, you used to be like a hardcore physicalist, and that's clearly shifted too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, I do talk a lot about how I sort of used to be a new atheist, and I've spoken about that so much that it's almost gotten boring. Not for me. I mean, for anybody who must be listening, like they get it. But there are other things going on too, and as you point to, one of the most important things, specifically since I've met you, so in the past few years, is, I suppose, my views on materialism and physicalism. There's sort of a bit of dispute as to what term to use, right? Because we don't really know what material is, and there's physicalism and there's naturalism. But we're kind of talking about the view that the universe is like made of stuff, like inanimate, I don't know, maybe atoms. If they're not atoms, maybe they're like vibrating strings or like localized collapsings of wave functions or whatever. And that this is sort of what the universe is made out of. It's not so much that I've given up on the received wisdom that is what the universe is made out of, but come to realize that nobody actually knows anything about the nature of what we're talking about. Like, we are, when it gets down to at least the subatomic level, I think we are in the same position as like the ancient Greek philosophers sat around going like, I just feel like it might be water. I just feel like water's kind of got something to do with it. No, maybe like it all comes from
I think that's a fair point. Like, you know, we really don't understand like a lot about physics. Like we don't even understand like what gravity is, you know. We don't understand what's going on here. Like, why are these laws of gravity? Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe we do know that. But there's just like a huge category of things in physics that we just don't understand, like why it would be this way. Like, so, and obviously we don't know much about pre-Big Bang or post dissipation of universe or energy in the universe or the collapse, etc. There's a lot that could be learned.
Fire. You know, didn't the Stoics think it all kind of came from fire? Like, that kind of thing. We're kind of doing the same thing at the quantum level, because we've got all of this.
We should do a day on that, actually. That would be a good day to do. I don't know, where would we put that? We should do a day of, like, what are actually the things that we don't know about physics in physics? Like, does that make sense in any of our months? Thinking, determining where to go? The art and science of goal setting, framing. Like, it's got to be in the thinking month. So maybe a stream day topic on all the things in physics that we don't actually know. For example, gravity, dimensions, etc. We don't know what we don't know. What we don't know. Yeah. Of course, it is helpful to have a category of things that we know that we don't know, and the known unknown, right? There's always going to be unknowns, unknown unknowns. Yeah, the concern though is that you can then take that type of discussion, right, and then you can conflate it to our intuitions about our own conscious experience, and then that's where we get into some trouble, where we do actually have, I believe, enough understanding of the physical workings of our brain and body to strongly speculate that that those two categories should not be together, that our conscious intuition shouldn't be connected to the physical world in that way. So that's yeah, once again, full circle on that same argument.
I'm not here to disparage the scientific method. I think it is wonderful and crucial and beautiful, and we antagonize it at our peril. But
at Jordan
on the
Petersonism
philosophical point of the stuff we're actually dealing with, once we get down to that atomic level, we are doing a lot of guesswork. Not to say that scientists are saying things they don't know, but they are just quite openly saying, like, we don't really know how to think of like what an electron is, whether it is a cloud of probability, whether it is a particle or a wave or a sort of pocket of energy or something. And so I don't know, it's quite an exciting time in the history of science that these fundamental questions of what stuff is actually made out of are kind of re-emerging as we begin to realize that the world literally beneath our feet is insanely weird, and much more weird than anything on the macro scale.
It is very, very interesting. In fact, this idea of like what is quantum stuff, and whether it should even be a question worth asking, dates right back to the advent of quantum physics. I can't remember the name of the guy, so I will pop it up in post. But in a paper by Arthur Fine, he talks about this physicist who, way back in the 1920s, who basically spent all his time warning his graduate students not to worry about what quantum physics actually means and to just stick to the equations, which is one of those attitudes which kind of appeals to me, because as people might be aware, because I bang on about it all the time, I'm a little bit more pragmatist in my metaphilosophical leanings. But there is the question of whether that answers what the nature of stuff is, what things there are. You sometimes put it as what a thing is rather than what a thing does. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is a crucial distinction. And what you're pointing to is the so-called shut up and calculate approach, right, which is associated with the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. That's a lot of words. When we started realizing that the quantum world is extremely weird, we started getting all of these results from things like the double split experiment, which most people are aware of, which sort of seems to mean that a particle can act like a particle or a wave depending on various factors, like whether you're observing it, that kind of stuff. It's all very weird. And so there are basically these different interpretations of the data, like what is really going on here. And in my view, the Copenhagen interpretation is not even really an interpretation of what's going on. It is just this shut up and calculate approach. It just means that as long as we have a mathematical model that accurately describes the data that we're seeing, then if we just treat this mathematical model as if it's true, then we're going to be able to do productive things. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. For example, a subatomic particle is like everywhere all at once until you observe it with sort of different probabilistic sort of different probabilities of being in particular areas, but it is in fact in all of these places all at once, and when you observe it, they say the wave function, which is this probability distribution, collapses, and suddenly the particle's in one place. Now, if you treat that as though it's true, you can do a lot of great maths and physics, right? And that's wonderful. But the mistake that's being made is confusing this methodological assumption for an ontological one, which is to say about the nature of stuff, is to say that, no, actually, I think there really is a cloud of probability that collapses when you observe it. Anybody who has the Copenhagen interpretation as like a metaphysic, I think is making a category error. As I like to say, you can't spell Copenhagen interpretation without cope. I think it's literally a case of sort of going, look, we have no idea what's going on. This is.
I didn't know that. I was that Alex and I had this in common. I keep pushing on that, on the wave function collapse interpretation on this channel. Mainly because it doesn't solve some of the issues that we find with quantum physics. Like it leaves things unsolved. I forget if it was spooky action at a distance or if it was determinism. It's probably determinism. That would make it determinism. So, yeah, I think it's really important that we follow a quantum physics interpretation. Like we don't know what's right, but an interpretation that solves those issues, right? Those huge issues. Now, of course, when you get to like many worlds, you've introduced like a new issue, but it's really an issue of imagination almost. It's a how does many worlds actually work? Like, you know, what are those many worlds? But it solves the issues of the spooky action and determinism. But you've introduced like a new weirdness to the issue or to the equation. But that one, I think that type of introduction is not as bad as the other issues, the spooky action and determinism.
This is a mathematical model that works, so let's just run with it. Alternatives you might have heard of, so like the many worlds interpretation is another competitor for an interpretation of the data. The reason why we sort of need to treat all of these different options as real is because they are real. And not in the sense that there's a cloud of probability, but in the sense that there are like, you know, almost infinitely many different branches of reality. You know, it's not a multiverse like, strictly speaking. Sort of.
Once again, and I say once again because I mentioned this like 6 months ago or a year ago. It would either be infinitely many, or, and I think this is what Sean Carroll said he was closer to, at least at the time of writing his book, Something Deeply Hidden. There may be a discrete set of electrons in the universe. Thus, the amount of splits that would have occurred that would create these many worlds would be discrete, and then you're not allowed to say anything that's anything that's discrete is almost infinite, right? It's a huge number. It's a ridiculously huge number, but it's not actually almost infinite because there's no such thing as almost infinite unless you're talking about quantities of infinity. But yeah, I mean, effectively, this is fine, you know.
Sort of little blobby universes in some ether somewhere. It's like every time a thing can happen, reality kind of splits off into all of these different possibilities. I spoke to David Deutsch at length about this. He's very confident that this is the real nature of reality. But the thing I'm trying to get across is that this calculation approach is what mathematicians and physicists do so well and do so brilliantly, is they come up with incredible mathematical systems that describe the universe and which can be used to do wonderful things. But that doesn't mean we've actually understood the nature of things. I always like to point to the example of Isaac Newton, because quantum mechanics is a bit complicated. Keeping it more simple, Newton discovers gravity, right? Mm-hmm. It is worth reflecting on what it is that Newton actually discovered. People knew that objects fell to the ground long before Newton did, right? The question is, well, what's going on here, you know? And Newton famously kind of looks at the moon and thinks, is the moon also falling? And he, like, brilliantly answers, yes, it is. And he suddenly realizes that actually what's happening is the moon is constantly falling towards the Earth, but it's just missing the Earth because it's moving sideways, and so it kind of keeps falling towards it but missing it and falling towards it and missing it, and that's how you get orbit. And so Newton realizes that the same thing that keeps the planets in orbit is the same thing that makes objects fall to the ground. And then he sets about mathematically describing this, and he comes up with the inverse square law. You know, the further something is away, if it's 2 times as far away, then it's, you know, whatever, minus 4 times as strong, this strength. And he says there's this thing called gravity, which is the label he gives to whatever this thing is that's keeping all of this together, right? And brilliant, and now we can send rockets to the moon. Awesome, thank you, Newton. But Newton, as I like to point out, explicitly in the Scholium to the 2nd edition of the Principia Mathematica, writes, as for what this gravity thing is, hypothesis non fingo, he writes. I frame no hypothesis. He's saying he doesn't know. He doesn't know what gravity is. He doesn't, like, he's just sort of coming up with a mathematical description and thinking, well, if we just treat it as though there is this force that works in this mathematical way, everything works, right?
So, kind of following the other stuff I say on this channel, it might be like an error to think that we can actually know what something in the physical world is, you know, that we can know what gravity is. Like, you know, the realm of ontology, once again, is a realm of consciousness concepts or conceptual thinking, understanding, stuff in the brain, etc. When we're talking about the physical world, we can only have concepts of the physical world. Like to figure out what like gravity is, the only way we can try to do that is to get better explanations of it, to have better conceptualizations of it that perhaps incorporates more empirical observations and more predictive potential. But that's not like actually figuring out like what gravity is at like an ontological level. That's, you know, we could just come up with a new way of describing what gravity is that has implications for how we can notice it or predict it. Okay, I think I'm gonna call it here, and then what we could continue both of these combos. We could do that and then that, and then the other thing is I feel like maybe we should just do topic, so that I could change this throughout the day. So topic, can we get this smaller now? No, can't. Can we make this bigger now? Yes, but it's not gonna wrap. There we go. I could do that. I think that'll have to do. Doesn't look great, but it's all right. All right. Thank you all for chilling, and enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend too. I think I'll be on tomorrow, but we'll see. Gonna get a lot of snow. Peace, homies. Have a good one.